Hello everyone. Thank you for joining me here again on SJ's classes. It's a poem that we are about to discuss. The poem is titled To a Skylark. It's written by the romantic poet P B Shelley. Before we read the poem, let me give you a few important points regarding this romantic poet. Percy Bysshe Shelley is an English poet. He was born on August 4th, 1792. He was one of the most highly regarded and influential poets of the 19th century, and he was also a prominent English Romantic poet. Romanticism's major themes like restlessness and brooding, rebellion against authority, interchange with nature, the power of the visionary imagination and of poetry, the pursuit of ideal love, all of these Shelley exemplified in the way he lived his life and live on in the substantial body of work that he left the world after his death by drowning at the age of 29. His first novel was a Gothic horror novel and it was titled Sastrosi. It was published in 1810. In the same year, he co-authored a novel with the title a anthology with the title Original Poetry by Victor and Cassiar. Victor is Shelley and Cassiar is Elizabeth Shelley. So in the same year, he with his sister he co-authored a volume of poems, and most of the poems were written in the Gothic tradition. Among his best-known works are Ozymandias that came out in 1818, Ode to the West Wind, which was published in 1819, To a Skylark, the poem that we are about to discuss, which was published in 1820, and the political ballad, The Mask of Anarchy. It was published in 1819. Let me also point out some of his major works, which includes a verse drama titled The Sensi that came out in 1819, and the long poems such as Alaster, published in 1815, Julian and Medallo that came out in 1819, Adonais 1821, Prometheus Unbound which was published in 1820, which is widely considered as his masterpiece. And there is also his final unfinished work which is titled The Triumph of Life that came out in 1822. And he faced with a tragic death in on 8 July 1822 shortly before his 30th birthday. Shelley drowned in a storm while attempting to sail from Leghorn to La Spezia in Italy in his schooner. Schooner is a sailing vessel which was used in the former times and it was called Don Juan. The schooner was called Don Juan. So that is how he died on 8 July 1822. Now, a few words on the poem that we are about to discuss. This poem was composed in the summer of 1820 when Shelley was living in Livorno, which is a town on the northwest coast of Italy. It was inspired by the song of a real skylark, which was heard in Italy in the 1820s. The poem consists of 21 stanzas made up of 5 lines each. There are total 105 lines in this poem, and the rhyme scheme of each stanza is A B A B B. That is the rhyme scheme of each stanza, A B A B B. The poem describes the powerful grace and beauty of the skylark's bird's song. The poem speaker addresses the bird directly and praises the purity of its music, which is later contrasted with the sad, hollow human communication. So, that is a conclusion that Shelley arrives at. He's able to distinguish between the merry sound of the skylark and the sad, hollow human communication. The poem's unconventional form features a song-like rhyme scheme and a bouncy rhythm that subtly mimics the skylark's chords. The first four lines of each stanza are written in trochaic trimeter, which means that a stressed syllable comes before an unstressed syllable. And the fifth line, which is a longer line than the earlier four lines, and it's written in iambic hexameter, which means each line has 6 beats of unstressed syllables preceding stressed. So that is a meter that Shelley has used or employed in the verses of To a Skylark. So those are a few important points regarding the poet as well as the poem. Now let's start reading the poem. It's a long poem, so kindly bear with me till I finish reading it. Hail to thee, blithe spirit, bird thou never wert, that from heaven or near it pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. Hail to thee, blithe spirit. The poet or the speaker of the poem praises the bird whom he addresses as a blithe spirit. A blithe spirit means a spirit that is carefree and happy. The poet perhaps feels a sort of respect for the bird, and that is probably why he uses the expression hail to thee, praise be to thee. So, hail to thee, carefree and happy spirit, bird thou never wert. Wert is an archaic form for where. So, bird thou never were, bed you were never were. The speaker feels that it is not actually a bird, but a creature from heaven, or at least near heaven. That is what he means by the second and third line. Bird thou never wert, that from heaven or near it. Pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. Profuse means in extreme abundance, and unpremeditated means not prepared in advance, something which is not prepared or planned earlier. So the skylark from there pours out its emotion in plentiful, artful strings of musical notes. So this is how Shelley describes the skylark's song. Higher, still and higher, from the earth thou springest like a cloud of fire. The blue deep thou wingest, and singing still dost soar, and soaring ever singest. So the bird flies higher and higher from earth like a cloud of fire, and it flies through the vast blue sky along with its singing. That is what Shelley narrates to us in the second stanza. Let's read the third and the fourth stanzas. In the golden lightning of the sunken sea, over which clouds are brightening. So it's evening time, and we have the setting sun that gives off a golden light that illuminates the clouds. In the golden lightning of the sunken sun. Sunken sun means the sun that is about to set. Over which clouds are brightening, thou dost float and run. Thou is Old English for you. And in this poem, thou refers to the skylark. Thou dost float and run like an unbodied joy whose race is just begun. So the bird drifts through the sky as an unbodied joy, joy that has no body. So in this particular poem or in this particular stanza, Shelley imagines the skylark to be joy which has no body, the abstract idea, joy which has no body. Thou dost float and run like an unbodied joy whose race is just begun. So the skylark drifts through the sky as an unbodied joy, as if it is only beginning a race. The pale purple even melts around thy flight. So the pale purple color of the evening sky seems to melt and merge into the bird. Like a star of heaven in the broad daylight, thou art unseen, but yet I hear thy shrill delight. The skylark is portrayed as a bright star in the sky, which you can see even during the day. The speaker, even though he can't see the bird, can still hear its high pitched song. So we have numerous comparisons in this particular poem, comparisons between Skylark and other entities that you see around. So in this stanza, Shelley compares the skylark to a bright star which you can see even during the day. As of now, he can't see the bird, but still he can hear its high-pitched song. Keen as are the arrows of that silver sphere, whose intense lamp narrows in the white dawn, clear until we hardly see, we feel that it is there. The song of the skylark is bright and piercing as the moonbeams, the light from the moon, which glow is dimmed by the bright light of the dawn. So the glow of the moon is dimmed by the bright light of the dawn. And the song of the skylark in this stanza is being compared to the moonbeams. Even though you can hardly see it, you still feel its presence. That is what he says in the last line. Until we hardly see, we feel that it is there. So even though you cannot see it visually, you can still feel its presence. All the earth and air with thy voice is loud, as when night is bare from one lonely cloud, the moon rains out her beams and heaven is overflowed. All the earth and air with thy voice is loud. So the voice of the skylark fills the earth and sky. As when night is bare from one lonely cloud, the moon rains out her beams and heaven is overflowed. And for the speaker, this is just like the moon on a clear night. The beams of light from the moon seem to fill the sky. What thou art we know not. What is most like thee? From rainbow clouds there flow not drops so bright to see, as from thy presence showers a rain of melody. What thou art we know not. So, as human beings, the speaker or the poet says that as human beings, we do not understand your true power. We know not what you are. What is most like thee? The speaker or the poet asks this question to the skylark to give us an example of another creature or thing that could be compared with the skylark, and thereby we can understand. So, give us an example of some other creature or thing so that we can compare it with you and try to understand how your true power. From rainbow clouds there flow not drops so bright to see, as from thy presence showers a rain of melody. So the melody the melody that the skylark showers outdoes the bright raindrops that create rainbows among the clouds. So it even outdoes the bright raindrops that creates rainbows among clouds. Like a poet hidden in the light of thought, singing hymns unbidden, till the world is wrought to sympathy with hopes and fears it heeded not. So the speaker in this stanza compares the skylark to a poet engaged in deep thought, like a poet hidden in the light of thought. So that is how Shelley narrates to us the appearance or how he compares or to what he compares Skylark in this particular stanza. The poet sings or writes hymns which are unbidden or uninvited, probably from his instinct, until the world becomes sympathetic with the hopes and fears it had previously disregarded. So, in this stanza, Shelley compares the skylark to a poet who is deeply engaged in thought, and the poet sings or writes hymns or verses or poetry which are unbidden, which means uninvited, until the world becomes sympathetic with the hopes and fears it had previously disregarded. Like a high-born maiden in a palace tower, soothing her love-laden soul in secret hour, with music sweet as love, which overflows her bower. So in the previous stanza, Shelley compared the skylark to a poet, and in this stanza, Shelley, or the speaker of the poem, compares the skylark to a young woman of aristocratic birth. a high-born maiden. So she is of an aristocratic birth. She belongs to the upper class, who sings secretly from a palace tower to soothe her soul that is filled with love. And what is this high-born maiden doing? She is singing secretly from a palace tower so as to soothe her soul that is filled with love. Soothing her love-laden soul in secret hour with music sweet as love which overflows her bower. And her songs are sweet and delightful as love, and it permeates her bower or chamber. So in this stanza, Shelley compares the skylark to a highborn maiden who secretly sings delightful and sweet music so as to soothe her love-filled soul. Like a glowworm golden in a dell of dew, scattering unbeholden its aerial hue among the flowers and grass which screen it from the view. So, in the earlier stanza, Shelley compared the skylark to a poet. Then he compared the skylark to a highborn maiden. And in this stanza, you can see that the speaker or the poet, Shelley, he compares the skylark to a glowworm, and he says that it spreads its radiance among the flowers and grass unbeholden. Unbeholden means not out of any obligation. So the glowworm spreads its glow without, not because of any obligation, not because it has any obligation to spread light among these plants and grass. It does this unbeholden, without, not out of any obligation. And this radiance also prevents it from being seen by others. So its aerial hue among the flowers and grass which screen it from the view. So we have a series of comparisons being made here by the poet. Initially, Skylark was compared with the poet, and then the Skylark was compared with a highborn maiden, and in this stanza, the speaker or the poet compares the skylark to a glowworm. Like a rose embowered in its own green leaves, by warm winds deflowered, till the scent it gives makes faint with too much sweet those heavy winged thieves. So finally, the speaker compares the skylark to a rose that is embowered or sheltered by its own green leaves before the warm winds sweep them away. So in this stanza, the speaker compares the skylark to a rose that is embowered or protected by its own leaves so that it does not fall away during the strong winds. Till the scent it gives makes faint with too much sweet those heavy winged thieves. So the overwhelming scent of the rose makes faint or intoxicates the heavy winged thieves. Now, who are these heavy winged thieves? The bees. The bees are being described here as the heavy winged thieves. Sound of vernal showers on the twinkling grass, rain awakened flowers, all that ever was joyous and clear and fresh, thy music doth surpass. So, in this particular stanza, the poet says that its music surpasses every other sounds that you can hear in nature. Sound of the spring showers or rain, falling on the grass that shines, the flowers that are brought to life by the spring showers, everything that could be termed joyful or clear or vivid and fresh. No, the skylark's music or song surpasses. So that is how melodious its song is. That's how joyful its song is. That's how clear and vivid the skylark's song is. And that is how fresh the skylark's song is. Teach us, sprite or bird, what sweet thoughts are thine? The speaker, now he's not sure whether the skylark is a bird or a fairy with magical powers, and that is why he calls it a sprite. Sprite means a fairy with magical powers. So, are you a fairy with magical powers or are you a bird? He asks the creature to teach us or the humankind about its sweet thoughts. Tell me about your sweet thoughts that makes your melody, music so joyful. So tell us more about it. I have never heard praise of love or wine that panted forth a flood of rapture so divine. The speaker says that he has never heard anything, be it a praise for love or a praise for wine or food, that was as heavenly, as divine as the music of Skylark. Chorus hymnal or triumphal chant matched with thine would be all but an empty want. So when the Skylark song is compared to wedding songs, that is what is meant by the chorus hymnal, which means a wedding hymn or song. So when the Skylark song is compared with wedding songs or triumphant chant means songs celebrating victories, these hymns and songs seem nothing but empty want, which means hollow boast or exaggeration or self-praise, but an empty want, a thing wherein we feel there is some hidden want. So it feels like these songs, these wedding songs or this triumphal chant or hymns, they lack something. They hint at an unspoken desire for something more. But you don't get this feeling when you listen to the song, the melodious song of the Skylark. What objects are the fountains of thy happy strain? The speaker wonders about the inspiration or sources of inspiration behind the Skylark's joyful music. What objects are the fountains of thy happy strain? What fields or waves or mountains? Are these the sources of your inspiration? Source of your melodious song? Fields, waves, mountains? Are these the sources of your inspiration? What shapes of sky or plain? What formation in the sky or in the ground is the cause of your music or the reason behind your music? What love of thine own kind? What ignorance of pain? So, is it what I said earlier? Is it the field or the wave or the mountains or the formations that you see in the sky or on the ground? Or is it the love for your own kind? Or is it your suffering that you're pouring out through your joyful song? So, what is it that you are trying to express? What is the reason behind your melodious song? So, that is what the poet or the speaker ponders about in this particular stanza. With thy clear, keen joyance, languor cannot be. Shadow of annoyance never came near thee. Thou lovest, but never knew love's sad satiety. So the Skylark song is so joyous that the speaker cannot imagine that the bird is exhausted. Languor means a lack of interest or an exhausted state. Joyance is an archaic expression for a joyous feeling, a state of joy. So the speaker, the poet, feels that the song of the Skylark is so joyous that you cannot imagine that the bird is lacking interest or exhausted or not in a comfortable state or even has known any trace of irritation. The speaker concludes that the Skylark loves but has not known the sadness that excessive love can bring. Thou lovest, but never knew love's sad satiety. Satiety means a satisfied kind of state. So the Skylark loves, but it has never known the sadness that excessive love can bring. Waking or asleep, thou of death must deem things more true and deep than we mortals dream. So the speaker says that waking or asleep, which means consciously or unconsciously, the Skylark must consider matters of death more deeply, even more what mere mortals or human beings could dream or imagine. So it's a kind of a request being made there by the speaker to the Skylark. Or how could thy notes flow in such a crystal stream? Or else, how could its music flow forth in such a crystal stream with such beauty and clarity? We look before and after and pine for what is not. So, here the poet establishes the difference between the human beings and the Skylark. We, as human beings, look before and after. and pine for what is not. So people look towards their past and the future and pine for. Pine for means desire for what they don't have. Our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught. So the speaker says that even the most genuine human laughter contains some sort of suffering. And finally, the famous line by P B Shelley: our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. The sweetest songs that we have ever written, or the most pleasing songs that people have composed, are in fact the ones that express the most misery. This is one of the famous lines that are frequently quoted from P B Shelley. Yet, if we could scorn hate and pride and fear, if we were things born not to shed a tear, I know not how thy joy we ever should come near. The speaker says that even if we could refuse or reject things like hatred, pride, and fear, or even if we were incapable of crying, we could have never achieved your joy. So that is how, joyful, that is how melodious, and that is how beautiful the Skylark's song is. Now, even if we could reject, negative feelings like hatred, pride, and fear, even if we could do away with crying, the poet or the speaker thinks that we could have never achieved your joy. Better than all measures of delightful sound, better than all treasures that in books are found, thy skill to poet where thou scorner of the ground. So the speaker states that for poets, the skylark's skill to sing so melodiously is greater than any other sound or music or any piece of information that can be found in books. So it's more delightful than all the delightful sounds that you can hear around you, and also it's better than all treasures that you can find from any book. Teach me half the gladness that thy brain must know. Such harmonious madness from my lips would flow. The world should listen then as I am listening now. So the speaker finally concludes, or Shelley concludes, by making one final request to the skylark. The speaker says, teach me half the gladness that thy brain must know. So he requests the skylark to teach half the knowledge of happiness that it knows. Probably the poet is requesting the skylark to share half of its joy, or at least the cause for the joy. Why does the speaker or the poet want it? Why does the poet wants half the knowledge of the skylark? Probably so that it could, the poet could create harmonious madness or melodious verses, which the world would listen just as the poet now listens to the skylark. So that is where Shelley concludes this particular poem. So it's a poem which portrays the melodious sound of skylark. It's indeed interesting to note that Shelley has, narrated to us the music or the sound of the skylark, or he has used verses that would actually, help us understand how melodious the sound of the skylark was when he heard it. I hope you have understood the poem. Thank you so much for being with me. I'll see you in another video lesson. Thank you.